You see, respect is not begged, it's earned. No matter how many promotional videos Turkey releases, no matter how many discounted travel packages they offer, the truth remains the same. A nation that disrespects another can't expect open arms in return. That's not how relationships work, between people or between countries. Right now, Turkey is reaching out, asking Indians to visit, to boost its struggling tourism economy. But let's not forget where they stood when India needed solidarity. Let's not forget the speeches, the biased rhetoric, the loud silence in moments that demanded moral clarity. They spoke against us when it was convenient, and now they're whispering offers when it's desperate. You don't get to undermine a country's internal matters, take political sides against it in international forums, and then turn around expecting economic cooperation. That's not diplomacy. That's opportunism. It's as if they believe Indian citizens have short memories or worse, no self-respect. But we do. We remember, we see, and now it's time to act on that awareness. A lot of people say, but what's the harm in travel? Politics and tourism are separate. Are they really? Tourism is money. Money is power. When you choose to spend your hard-earned income in a country that has openly disrespected yours, you're not just taking a vacation. You're validating their stance. You're rewarding the behavior that should be challenged. And if we, as Indian citizens, don't draw that line, who will? Governments may speak in terms of diplomacy, but the people, we speak in action. We speak with our choices. And the most powerful choice we can make is to say, not now. Not until you've shown you respect us. This isn't about hate. This isn't about division. This is about principle, about standing for something. Because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. We're not talking about boycotting a people. Turkish citizens aren't the enemy. This is about holding a government accountable for its decisions, for the public statements it made, for the alliances it chose to keep. We're not going to forget who sided with whom when it mattered most, because India has been rising, not just economically, but in dignity, and anyone who wants to be part of that journey has to respect the foundation it's built on. Some will say it's just politics. It doesn't affect tourists. But let me ask you, when was the last time you visited a place with joy in your heart, while knowing that the government there had no respect for yours? Doesn't matter how blue the water is or how ancient the ruins are. If there's no mutual respect, the experience is tainted. We can admire a culture and still reject the politics behind it. We can appreciate history without forgetting our own. And here's what it comes down to. If Turkey wants Indian friendship, they need to earn Indian trust. If they want our business, they need to first offer us basic diplomatic respect. Not token words, not last-minute press statements. Real, consistent respect. That's the currency of relationships in this world. So no, we're not begging to be treated well. We're simply refusing to be treated poorly. And if a boycott is what it takes to send that message, then so be it. Let our silence speak louder than their invitations. Let our absence be our loudest protest. Because when you stand with dignity, you never stand alone. You can't slap a man and expect him to shake your hand. That's not respect, that's arrogance. That's what we're seeing right now with Turkey. After years of hostile rhetoric, anti-India posturing, and public alliances with nations that seek to undermine our sovereignty, they're suddenly reaching out with a smile, asking Indians to come spend their money, to help rebuild their fragile tourism economy. But how do you extend your hand to someone who just insulted you at the global stage? How do you smile for a photo when they've been whispering behind your back in the corridors of power? That's not diplomacy. That's betrayal wrapped in hospitality. Look at the record. Turkey has taken strong stances against India's position in Kashmir. They've supported Pakistan, not just in vague terms, but openly in statements made at the UN. They've ignored India's concerns. and they've treated our internal matters as if they were their own business to meddle in. And now, when tourism revenues have dipped, when the global economy has hit them hard, they're looking to the very people they dismissed for help. As if we owe them something, as if our silence is for sale. We need to remember every plane ticket, every hotel booking, every dollar spent abroad is a choice, and choices have consequences. When you vacation in a country that disrespects your homeland, you don't just take a trip. You send a message. You tell them it's okay. We'll ignore what you said about us. We'll fund your recovery even if you stood against us when we needed solidarity. That's not generosity. That's weakness, and India is not weak. Not anymore. See, this isn't about tourism. It's about dignity. It's about knowing who stood with us in hard times and who didn't. You don't get to disrespect a sovereign nation and then turn around and ask its people to come help your economy. That's not how loyalty works. That's not how friendship works. And it sure isn't how self-respecting citizens should operate. True allies stand with you in the dark. They don't just show up when the spotlight is bright and the cameras are rolling. They support you when it costs them something, when it's unpopular, when it means choosing principles over politics. And Turkey hasn't done that for India. Time and again, when the world watched, Turkey chose to stand on the wrong side of our story. And now they want to be part of our success, our growth, our spending power. That's not just misguided. That's offensive. We, the people, don't have to shout. We don't have to protest with signs or noise. We protest with silence, with action, with the decision to say, no, not this time. The strongest message we can send is not anger, it's absence. When Turkey sees those empty seats on their flights, those cancelled bookings, those hotel rooms unfilled, maybe then they'll understand. Maybe then they'll reflect. Maybe then they'll realize that respect is not a luxury. It's a requirement, because we remember who stood with us and who didn't. We remember the speeches, the votes, the silence, and we don't forget so easily, not when our dignity is at stake. Let Turkey learn this simple truth. You can't insult a nation and expect its people to serve your economy. You can't turn your back and expect an embrace. We are not just travelers, we are citizens, and our choices carry weight. And if they truly want our friendship, they better start by showing some respect. A man must walk in truth, or he walks in chains. And the truth is, too many of us are walking blindly into places that don't respect who we are, where we come from, or what we stand for. Turkey's sudden interest in attracting Indian tourists is not a gesture of friendship. It's a calculated move. Their economy is struggling, their tourism industry needs rescuing, and they see India's rising middle class as the golden ticket. But what they don't count on is our memory. They don't expect us to remember the times they stood against us, the times they chose our adversaries over our interests, the times they twisted the truth about our nation on global platforms. And now, they want us to pretend none of that happened. Walking in truth means we don't let money, scenery, or convenience blind us. Because when we ignore reality for comfort, we become complicit in the very disrespect we should be rejecting. Turkey's government has repeatedly attacked India's sovereignty with words, loud, clear, and public. Whether it's backing Pakistan on Kashmir or questioning India's internal policies in international forums, Turkey has gone out of its way to challenge our stance, to damage our image, and to spread narratives that don't belong to them. That's not neutrality. That's hostility with a suit and tie. Now they want Indian tourists. They want us to come, spend freely, smile for the cameras, and boost their economy. But here's the uncomfortable truth. When we do that, we fund the very system that disrespected us. Every rupee we spend there strengthens a regime that didn't hesitate to undermine our nation's integrity. So what are we really doing when we board that flight? We're not just going on vacation. we're feeding the same hand that once pointed a finger at us. That's not harmless. That's not innocent. That's ignorance dressed up as leisure. We have to ask ourselves, where do we draw the line? At what point do we say enough? It's not about hating a country. It's not about targeting a people. It's about being aware, being responsible, being strong enough to say, I will not support you until you respect me. And that's not anger talking. That's truth. That's principle. That's what walking in truth looks like. See, when a nation behaves like Turkey has, speaking against us when it costs them nothing, and reaching out when they're desperate, it reveals what they truly think of us. Not as equals, not as friends, but as a market, a wallet, a quick fix for a broken economy, and that should offend us more than any headline ever could, because we are more than just consumers, we are citizens. We are proud of where we come from, and we will not fund disrespect in the name of recreation. People say, don't mix politics with travel, but politics already mixed itself in when Turkey chose sides against us. What we do now, whether we choose to go or not, is the political statement. You don't need to carry a placard. You don't need to chant in the streets. You just need to choose not to go. That's how you walk in truth. Quietly, firmly, with purpose, and when enough of us make that choice, the message will be heard. It won't be loud, but it'll be clear. Until you respect us, you won't benefit from us. That's not revenge. That's self-respect. That's clarity. That's power. And if we're not willing to stand for that, then we'll fall for anything. Don't confuse hospitality with accountability. Just because a nation smiles at you when you land doesn't mean it respects you when you leave. Turkey wants Indians to come, to eat their food, take their tours, snap their selfies at Hagia Sophia and Cappadocia, and spend billions in the process. But beneath the surface of that hospitality lies a deeper truth. The Turkish government has yet to be held accountable for the words and actions it has taken against India. Warm welcomes don't erase cold-hearted politics. It's easy to get drawn in by the charm of a culture, the kindness of its people, the beauty of its landscape. And make no mistake, Turkey is a beautiful place, with rich history, vibrant cities, and generous locals. But we must separate the people from the politics. The Turkish government, time and again, has chosen to stand on the wrong side of India's story. It's spoken out against our internal matters, criticized our decisions, and chosen alliances that openly work to destabilize us. Yet when the money dries up, when tourism slumps, suddenly they remember India. Suddenly they roll out the red carpet. This is not about tourism. It's about principle. You can't show fake smiles at the airport and hope we forget what you said in international forums. You can't pose for photos with Indian influencers while backing those who threaten Indian lives. That's not hospitality, it's hypocrisy, and as Indian citizens, we must not reward that. Because when we confuse hospitality with accountability, we give a free pass to those who wrong us and hide behind charm. Turkey's recent desperation to attract Indian tourists is not a sign of changing attitude, it's a sign of changing needs. They don't want to fix the relationship, they want to fix their economy, but you cannot build friendship on convenience. True respect doesn't show up when you're broke, it shows up when you have nothing to gain. And Turkey didn't show up for India, not when it mattered, not when the world was watching, not when India stood firm and needed its global partners to respect its sovereignty. So now it falls on us, the people, to make a choice. Do we support a government that disrespected ours simply because the view is nice? Or do we stand firm in our dignity and say, not this time, because if we ignore what's been said and done, we're not just tourists, we're enablers. We enable double standards, we enable selective memory, we enable governments to speak against us without fear of consequence, and that has to stop. This isn't a call for hate, this is a call for clarity, for wisdom, for accountability. We have to be the ones to remind the world that Indian respect is not a commodity. It's not something you borrow when you're desperate and discard when you're stable. You don't get our support if you don't support us. It's that simple, and maybe, just maybe, if enough of us say no. No to supporting disrespect. No to funding hypocrisy. Then Turkey will realize that respect is not a tourism strategy. It's a relationship. And like any relationship, it must be built on truth, on consistency, and on mutual dignity, not desperation. So yes, Turkey may offer hospitality, but India must demand accountability. You want friendship? Then show loyalty in the dark. That's the measure of character, whether it's between people or nations. It's easy to smile when the world is watching, to shake hands in daylight, to speak sweet words when the moment is profitable. But what matters more is what you do when the cameras are off, when there's nothing to gain, when the path of principle is harder than the path of convenience. And that's where Turkey has failed India. For years, Turkey has aligned itself with voices that openly oppose India's sovereignty. On global platforms, they've made speeches supporting Pakistan's narrative on Kashmir. They've criticized India's internal matters as if they had a stake in our constitution. They didn't just stay silent, they picked a side, and it wasn't ours. That's not friendship. That's opportunism dressed up in diplomacy. When India needed global partners to stand firm, to support its right to defend its borders, to govern its people, and to protect its unity, Turkey chose otherwise. That decision wasn't made in confusion. It was deliberate, calculated, and consistent. They weren't loyal in the dark. They sided with the opposition, publicly and without hesitation. And now, when they're facing economic hardship, when their tourism sector is suffering, they turn to us and ask for support. They roll out ads, influencers, and soft smiles, hoping we forget what they said, what they did. But we shouldn't forget, because loyalty isn't just shown when things are good. It's proven when times are hard. And that's the problem. Turkey wants to start the friendship at the checkout counter. They want to show love when they need our money. But where was the love when India was fighting misinformation on the world stage? Where was their voice when India was calling for support, for fairness, for neutrality? They didn't just walk away. They walked toward our opponents. And now, they want us to ignore all that in the name of people connections. That's not how real friendship works. Real friendship stands up when no one's clapping. Real allies don't wait until they're broke to show you respect. If Turkey wants a relationship with India, it must be built on loyalty, not convenience. You don't just invite us when your economy tanks. You support us when your voice matters, not after the damage is done, not when you're looking for a bailout through tourism. Some might say, that's politics. Let it go. But friendship between nations isn't immune to accountability. Just like individuals, countries have to earn trust. And trust is built through consistency, not charm. Through truth, not tactics. Through action, not apology tours. Turkey had a choice, time and again, to show solidarity, or at the very least, stay neutral. They chose neither. Now it's our turn to choose. We can either pretend the past doesn't matter, or we can demand that it does. We can reward those who disrespected us, or we can show them that Indian dignity is not up for sale. Not for discounts, not for beach views, not for travel deals. Because if we don't value our national pride, no one else will. So let this be clear. If Turkey wants our friendship, let them show loyalty when it's inconvenient. Let them stand with us when there's nothing in it for them. That's the test of any true ally. And until then, we don't owe them our presence, our praise, or our passport. We don't need to shout. We just need to stop showing up. Because silence, when grounded in principle, can be louder than any protest. Right now, Turkey is calling out to Indian travelers, not out of love, not out of shared culture or mutual admiration, but out of economic desperation. They want our presence, they want our rupees, they want our time and attention, but they haven't earned it, not after the years of disrespect, not after siding with voices that questioned our sovereignty, our democracy, our integrity as a nation. And here's the truth: they think we'll forget. They think we'll let it slide, because in the past maybe we did. Maybe we overlooked politics for the sake of holidays. Maybe we said, "What does it matter?" But it matters now. It matters because there comes a point where silence becomes approval. There comes a moment when continuing to show up in a place that undermines your country says more about you than it does about them. Let's be clear. Turkey didn't just stay neutral in global matters concerning India. They took active steps to damage our image. They voiced support for Pakistan over Kashmir. They criticized Indian domestic policy from foreign stages. They projected a version of India that aligned with their political ambitions, not with truth, and certainly not with friendship. But now that their economy is bleeding, now that tourism is crashing, they want a reset, without reflection, without apology, without accountability. So what do? We stay home, or we go elsewhere. We don't need anger. We don't need noise. We just need discipline. Because every time we choose not to support a regime that disrespects us, we take a stand. And that stand speaks volumes. No hashtags needed. No slogans. Just quiet refusal. That's power. Imagine if millions of Indian travelers, some of the biggest spenders in international tourism, simply chose other destinations. Imagine the silence echoing through their empty hotels, the absence felt in their tourism statistics, the quiet loss of a nation that thought we would come running at the first travel offer. That's not revenge. That's dignity. They'll notice. They already are. That's why the sudden charm offensive. That's why the ads tailored for Indian audiences, the influencers praising Istanbul, the packages targeting Diwali and wedding travel. But what they're really doing is testing us. They're asking, will Indians forget everything for a beach view? Will they trade self-respect for scenery? And we must answer, not with slogans, but with choices. Because the strongest response to disrespect isn't yelling. It's walking away. It's knowing your value and refusing to spend it where it isn't appreciated. That's a quiet strength. That's the kind of strength a rising nation like India must learn to use, not just in war rooms or policy debates, but in everyday decisions, like where we vacation, where we invest, where we are present. If Turkey truly wants to rebuild a relationship with India, let them start with respect. Not tourist traps, not promotional videos. Respect. Until then, we don't need to fight them. We don't even need to talk about them. We just need to stop showing up. That absence, that's our message, and trust me, they'll hear it.